What's up everybody? Today I am very excited to do this reaction video. I've done a reaction to NF's Mansion before and he just dropped a new album last week. I love NF, I love his music, and so we're going to be diving into the title track Fear today, which specifically mentions some of his struggles with mental health and his diagnosis of OCD. And so we're just going to go through, explore it together. I have listened to the track once before and I have not seen the music video, so we're going to be watching that today. A lot of my reactions are going to be based on the musicality and the lyrics, a little bit on what catches my eye in the video, but I can't guarantee much in that regard. As you can see, we do have a line of merch now. I am wearing a Bella and Canvas. This is a medium-sized pink shirt with the center logo on it. It's very comfortable. It just came in the mail a couple of days ago, so I'm really glad to be able to debut it with this video for you all. Please check the link in the description below to get your own shirt. We have a couple of different color varieties and they range from, I think, $13 to $15, maybe a little more for larger sizes. So go ahead and check that out in the description below. As always, please do like and subscribe. Let's dive into the music video.
Hello darkness, my old friend. Hello. Knocking at my door again.
Okay, so this is a part that I didn't get from just listening to the track by itself, but seeing that there's actually like a manifestation or a personification of darkness knocking at his actual door. And it looks like he's keeping the same mansion analogy that he's had through multiple albums now, of his mind being this mansion that is in some disrepair, but that's where he resides, and darkness is trying to enter back in again.
Begging me to come outside, let you back into my life. Now, usually I'd be strong enough to lock the doors and keep them shut.
Okay, so if we're talking about darkness as his struggle with mental illness, and he's saying that usually he has enough strength to keep the door shut, this is an attitude that I hear a lot from my clients, that, oh, if I'm just strong enough that I'm not gonna have to succumb to relapse or to recurrences of my symptoms. And you know, like, I've been through counseling, I've developed all these skills, I just gotta stay strong enough. It's both a helpful and an unhelpful concept depending on the person, right? Especially with this imagery that he has with locking the door and that being like the strength, the barrier that keeps out the mental illness. There's a sense, yes, where we have protective practices and resiliencies that help us to be able to prevent relapse or prevent recurrences of symptoms, healthy habits, eating well, sleeping well, taking care of ourselves, making sure that we rest and making sure that we are challenged and stimulated appropriately. But on the other end of the spectrum, people take that really hard when symptoms do come back, and sometimes it just happens, and think that it's a sign of weakness that they couldn't maintain their mental health.
But not today, I'm desperate. So go ahead and come on in. So go ahead and come on in.
So one thing I do appreciate about NF is that he's exploring a lot of different musical styles within this album. I've listened to maybe half the tracks so far, and there's just a lot of inventiveness and originality in each one in terms of different styles and musical styles, and we'll get into some of the musical pieces of that here as well. So right now the beat is very minimal, which I would imagine implies a lot of isolation and just kind of like, I'm alone in my mind right now. Things feel kind of calm, but there's also this sense of tension with the plucked strings that are muted as well, that there's a tension coming in of this coming interaction with the darkness. And you can hear that building up through this moment right here when the doors open and then the muted strings kind of stop for a second.
So go ahead and come on in.
Right, and now you've got the strumming of the palm muted strings, and then he's coming face to face with this dark version of himself, is what I'm imagining is what it is. Like I said, I haven't seen the music video before. And I'll make a quick note, anything that I say about the musicality and stuff, I am a musician, I'm classically trained, but what that means is anything that I say about the musicality is all my interpretation of what he's doing musically. I don't know what he actually intends with different elements of the music. I can only point those out and say what I think those elements do.
OCD is worse than ever, hands are bleeding, maybe I should take the pill stone. Know what's going on with me, some days I actually think I might be schizo.
Oh, that's interesting when he's talking about thinking he might actually be schizophrenic. And then the dialogue is passing between these two images of himself. When he's saying OCD is worse than ever, hands are bleeding, that might be an allusion to, yes, OCD. One of the stereotypical symptoms is repetitive and compulsive hand washing. And the thought process behind it is that there's usually this fear of something bad or terrible is going to happen, and I need to do something to prevent that bad thing from happening. Sometimes that shows up in obsessively washing their hands. And what happens is if you don't do that ritual, is what it's called, the right way, then you have to keep redoing it until there's a sense of relief and completeness. And that can lead to super cracked and dried hands. That leads to bleeding. And so when he says also that maybe he should take the pills, but don't, that can also be something that comes up with clients a lot, is that they think that, oh, being well means I can manage without medications. And sometimes, you know, that's what people want to go towards, is that independence of I don't need therapy, I don't need medication, and I can function without it. And more power to the clients who can go that route. But all that to say also, there are some clients who think that too soon, and that it's a sign of weakness, again, that we talked about earlier, to keep taking medications, to be dependent on a medication to be able to function. And then when we go off them too early or without psychiatrist supervision, then that can lead to a resurgence in the symptoms that we were trying to prevent in the first place. And that's a really sad situation for people to be in, because they want to be living a life that they remember having before all of this medication, before all this counseling, and they're trying to just get back to it.
Frantic, probably not, but even writing this is making me begin to spiral. Oh God. Made a promise to myself I wouldn't let the fear back in, but then I did though. Told the world that I was sick of running, then went back to running. What a joke.
And so now he's talking about the different ways that he's been talking about overcoming fear, getting away from it. He's told the world that he was sick of running, then went back to running. And this, again, this back and forth between the idea of relapse when it comes to mental illness. And I'm not talking about relapse within the substance use context, but just in the fact of symptoms recurring, that we do have relapse. There are ups and downs in terms of progress. And sometimes we have ups and ups, and then sometimes there's just a crash, or sometimes there's a dip. And when he says, I made a promise to myself that I wouldn't let the fear back in, but then I did. That's where some of that uncertainty and like, man, I'm doing everything right, and then I'm still feeling depressed, or I'm still hearing the voices, or I'm still dealing with, in his case, maybe the obsessions and the compulsions. That doubt coming in can actually seep in and really take root and cause things to get worse if I get in my head about it. Like, am I doing something wrong? And I start changing stuff up, either with my practices or with my medication. And then that can actually cause things to spiral and become worse, where we're maybe oversensitive to the fact that sometimes we just have bad days or bad weeks, and then we overcorrect and do too much, and that can actually cause things to shift from the equilibrium that we've created for ourselves.
Disappointing, yeah, me too. I thought I finally made a breakthrough. Guess not.
Okay, so visually we see like the crack in the mirror. That little crack led to more of that darkness coming in, because we're suddenly so hyper aware and hypersensitive and overreacting to it. Again, this is a lot of my interpretation of his lyrics. I don't know a ton about his story in particular and what's happened between his last album and this current one, but it's a common enough occurrence that I can see that this might be what he's talking about. And his line, yeah, me too, I thought I finally made a breakthrough, guess not, is a really common thing that I hear from clients, that at the first sign of a relapse or something going wrong, that they look back at me and say, man, I thought we had made progress, and I guess that's just not the case. You know, I'm right back where I started. And what I always encourage them is like, look, we need to take a look back to where you actually started, because sometimes we think that taking a couple steps back means we're all the way back at the start line, and that's not the case. A lot of times we can point back to things that have changed for good and for permanently, that we just forget in the discouragement of feeling like, oh man, I'm back here again. I'm dealing with this symptom again. I thought we were done with that. Totally fair to say, I thought we were done with this. But that's what I'll always challenge my clients on. Let's take an actual look back to where you started from. And more often than not, we have moved forward. It's just we have to remember that sometimes it's 3 steps forward, 2 steps back, 5 steps forward, 3 steps back. And it's just like, we're always trying to make forward progress. And being able to understand and put relapse into the context of that makes a huge difference in how discouraged and disappointed we get when things aren't always linear in a positive direction.
It's the same song and dance, you have seen it before. Darkness holds out its hand, then we walk to the floor. Every decision made. Is it mine anymore? Like a puppet with strings, I just don't have a choice. What's the truth? What's a lie? Help me God, help me Lord. Face your fears, dry your eyes. Grandma died, what's the point? Lost the keys, lost my hope, lost my will, lost my joy, lost a friend, lost my hope, lost my faith, lost my voice.
Ooh. Yeah, I didn't want to interrupt that because that was like the huge build, right? As there's more tension of the ropes coming in and he's becoming a puppet on a string, being run by the darkness, by the obsessions and the compulsions that he's experiencing. And I do appreciate that he's talked about being a Christian rapper, but he's not Christian in the sense of like he's just putting out this message of faith, but just that that's a part of his life. That is what he cries out. What's the truth? What's a lie? Help me God, help me Lord. Like that's how he is reaching out for help and support from God. And there's these competing and warring voices of praying and seeking help, but also feeling that the OCD is holding the puppet strings, that it's actually running his life, that God's not in control, he's not in control, that he's just on a string and dancing to the tune of this mental disease. And that progression of lost the keys, lost my hope, lost my will, lost my joy, lost a friend, lost my home, lost my faith, lost my voice, all those just like how it escalates from the one thing, lost my keys, can turn into losing your hope, losing your voice, your joy. And yeah, a lot of it is just in how we're framing these disappointments and these setbacks that we experience. Yes, they're gonna happen, but if I get too caught up in it, that has a tendency to actually make things worse. And especially in talking about his diagnosis of OCD, that it really lends itself to someone obsessing and thinking over and over, almost turning into a magical ritual piece of like, how do I prevent myself from relapsing again? How do I prevent myself from having these compulsions and from getting this obsession out of my head? And it becomes its own obsession in itself. It's really tricky to manage, and it really helps to have an outside perspective be able to speak into that, which by the imagery in the video right now, he just feels really alone and isolated in this particular struggle, and it makes it really difficult to overcome that.
Standing back, watching my mansion burn to.
Okay, something interesting that I want to point out musically. There are a couple of elements here that rap is usually in a duple meter. And people who are musicians in the comments, please correct me if I'm wrong. I think that's usually the case, that you have like a 4/4 kind of meter for rap and hip hop and rock music and a lot of pop music in general. And it started that way with the repeated notes, and we'll get to the repeated notes in a second. But then after that transition, when the distortion comes in, you actually get into a triple meter. So let me break this down real quick. Duple meter is basically each beat is divided into twos. So it's either twos or fours, and that lends itself to a very straight, very rigid kind of pattern. But then when it transitions over to triple, that means each beat is now divided into threes. And what you have with threes is that that usually has a kind of swaying kind of feeling to it. And you'll kind of hear this as it goes to the repeated notes, da 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 da. And I can hear that being something that mimics a heartbeat, or I could see that being something where kind of the rigidness of the duple meter is now transitioned into something looser of the swaying triple meter. And that can represent a transition from the rigidness of the OCD over into some kind of freedom and relaxation so that his heart can just beat freely. As to the repeated notes, of course, you saw the imagery lined up with him washing his hands. It could very well represent the OCD where you're just so fixated on one thing and so you only hear that single note over and over again, da 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 da. And that combined with the imagery of him washing his hands and dealing with the flames and just those little sparks of added color and sound. It just makes for a really intense listening experience.
Ash while I hold the gas can, asking God if he started this fire.
That's a real struggle also, asking God if he started this fire, right? Like if you have this faith and also deal with the reality of your mind just feels like it's not your own or your body's not in control of itself, Those are some real difficult spiritual struggles that a lot of my clients have to wrestle with. I don't have any easy answers for that, but we do try to have conversations about that, try to figure out where does that line lie between there being real darkness and brokenness in this world, and also you holding on to this faith of there being a God who cares about you, who has power. Like, that's a very difficult concept for people to reconcile with.
Is this what you wanted? Is this what you wanted? Make all my hopes and my dreams come to life just to lay them to rest.
So you see visually the darkness creeping into him as the tension builds again with the palm muted strings, and then you hear the triple meter really jump in here. Da 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 da. And so this was something that I noticed on my first listen, and I wanted to point out that the "is this what you wanted" almost becomes like an obsession to him as he has that first kind of prayer with God. Is this what you wanted? He's asking him directly, but now it becomes an obsession that goes through the rest of this track, and you'll hear it throughout. And right now it's very intense. That's the only thing that you're hearing above the instruments. And what's going to be really interesting is what he does with this auditory representation of an obsession, right? If he's using this "is this what you wanted" line as a representation of an obsession, see how he develops that through the rest of the music.
Is this what you wanted? Is this what you wanted? Give me a false sense of peace just to show me what peace really is. Is this what you wanted? On the verge, on the edge. Is this what you wanted? Petrified, scared to death. Is this what you wanted? Praying to God, desperate. Is this what you wanted?
So what you'll see as this continues to build is that the difference visually is that this whole video he's been running away, isolating, trying to escape from the darkness. And this is the first time that he's actually confronted it and engaged with it. And you see the music begin to develop as you see that there's a more back and forth now. Is this what you wanted? Give me a false sense of peace just to show me what peace really is. And now there's more back and forth. There are more thoughts entering, and he's engaging with the obsession rather than trying to run away from it.
What you wanted, is this what you wanted? Hanging on by a thread. Is this what you wanted? Empty heart, nothing left. Is this what you wanted? Breaking down, spiraling. Is this what you wanted? What you wanted, is this what you wanted? Deep bad, is this what you wanted? My bed, is this what you wanted?
So now we're at a really intense point, right? That "is this what you want?" It continues to build, but now it's becoming more as a part of the beat instead of the actual lyrics. It's just this refrain as he's riffing off of that. And for those of you who are more familiar with NF's imagery, I don't know what the bag over his head means. Please comment down below, tell me what you think that means, or if he's actually made it really clear and I just missed it, let me know.
What you wanted, is this what you wanted? Yes, is this what you wanted? Is this what you feel? Started, is this what you wanted? What you wanted?
Man, what an intense listen. So at the end, that black-coated figure comes in and takes the keys from him. So I don't know whether that means that at the end of the video, the darkness has overtaken him and now holds the keys to his mansion. But yeah, he's talking about in the lyrics that he's watching his mansion burn to ash while he's struggling with God and himself and trying to figure out, like, why is this happening? He thought he was over this. He thought he was past the fear. And so this is a really real, just kind of track talking about the struggle of dealing with a chronic mental illness. That sometimes you think you're done with it and then it comes back unexpectedly, and what it's like to descend into that struggle again and feel disappointed and discouraged with yourself, wrestling spiritually and emotionally and mentally. There's a lot that goes into that. One of the things that I do appreciate, and he talks about it in his other tracks, of course, is that he's got real music. He's talking about the real parts of his struggle and his life. What I think is really helpful is that he doesn't just talk about mental illness, he doesn't just talk about his mental health, but that he is a person that is struggling with it. And you see that in the holistic elements that he approaches with this track. It's not just about the mental, but also the spiritual components of how he is wrestling with these ideas and with what he is experiencing. So yeah, if you haven't checked out the track, please go give it a listen. It's worth sitting down and taking a listen to. I haven't been able to do that because, you know, parenting, but I do want to listen through all of the music in this new album sooner rather than later. So thank you so much for checking out this video. Again, please do comment, let me know anything that I missed, other things that you noticed in either the music or the video or his lyrics. And also do check out the store. Again, that's a way to support the channel, get a really comfortable shirt for yourself. And again, thank you all so much for watching. I'll see you all next time.